heartbreaking scene in California where at this moment frequent Court TV guest Dan Horowitz shared the courtroom with Scott Deleski, charged with killing his wife, Pamela Vitale. Earlier, tears streamed down Horowitz's face as investigators described in graphic detail Vitale's murder on the first day of Scott Deleski's preliminary hearing. We're going to bring you the latest from the courtroom in a moment, but first let me introduce my panel. Former prosecutor Michael Cardoza is a good friend of Dan Horowitz, and with Michael, criminal defense attorney Paula Canny, forensic scientist Larry Kopolinsky will take us through the evidence, but first with the very latest from the courtroom, CourtTV.com reporter Lisa Sweetingham. Lisa, pretty emotional time for Dan to sit through all of this, but I understand an exception to the hearsay rule out there means he didn't have to testify.
That's right, Catherine. He's been sitting in the front row with members of Pamela's family, and he's not expected to testify. We also have a man who identified himself as Scott Deleski's father, yet didn't want to talk to reporters and kind of has been rushing in and out of the courtroom to get away from the press. But it has been quite somber in the courtroom today.
Well, what are we learning about the sequence of events that day, the timing of the murder, why Scott Deleski was up there? Do we have any more information?
Well, we don't know exactly why he was there. There's been a lot of talk about this alleged credit card scheme where he was supposedly purchasing hydroponic equipment, lighting and things that are sometimes used to cultivate marijuana, and that he was using a stolen neighbor's credit card and had accidentally put a bill-to address of Pamela and Daniel Horowitz's address at one point. But there was some discussion this morning by the deputy district attorney who said he would have testimony from people who will talk about the fact that Scott Deleski was upset that his border collie, Jazz, had been run over by a neighbor. And there was an article by the Contra Costa Times some time ago. This is the only article I've seen this about, where apparently a neighbor had alleged that perhaps he thought that Pamela was the one who had done it and come up that day. So that's not confirmed, but we are going to hear more testimony about that in the days to come.
And I understand there was quite a bit of dried blood, so that authorities seem to put her murder in the earlier hours that day.
That's right. We had a criminalist talk about her web surfing habits that morning. They checked her computer, and what they had found that she had started looking online at about 7:49, looking at cases related to Susan Polk, which was the case that Mr. Horowitz was working on at the time. And at about a little after 10, I believe in my notes it was 10:12, this continuous web surfing had been interrupted. Now, detectives said that when they found her body and looked at her, that there was quite a bit of dried blood on her hair and on her head, and that there were pools of blood, and also that because of the discoloration in her skin, that they had assumed that she had been dead for many hours. We do expect to hear evidence or testimony from witnesses who can talk about the autopsy and what was collected during that examination.
And I do understand, and this is absolutely horrific, that a neighbor testified that Daniel Horowitz could be heard crying out when he found Pamela that night.
That's right. A next-door neighbor who heard his car coming in, it was, I guess, sometime before 6 when the 911 call came in, and she said that according to a detective, she described it as what sounded like an animal, like a hurt animal screaming, and then she could hear his voice screaming, "Oh my God, Paula, no, no, no." And this was, of course, at the point this morning when Daniel's face, he's been so sort of stoic, but at that point you could see the tears rolling down his eyes, and it's been quite emotional for the whole family there in the courtroom this morning.
Do you expect we'll hear from the girlfriend, Scott Deleski's girlfriend, that apparently had a tryst with him after this, and his mother, which is an individual supposed to testify for the prosecution?
We do expect to hear from them. There's a gag order, so not a lot is being talked about as far as witnesses, but we have 22 witnesses, and it's possible that tomorrow we're going to hear about people who know and are friendly with Scott Deleski, and on Thursday we might hear evidence from witnesses who are going to talk about withholding evidence by people close to him. So I'm guessing that means the mother on Thursday, but we just don't know for sure.
All right, let me ask Paula a question. Paula, what are the pros and cons of a preliminary hearing? I mean, oftentimes when I was back in Texas, we'd go to the grand jury and get it done quickly so that the defendant, was sort of out of luck when it came to a preliminary hearing and having an opportunity to do all the quizzing. But at the same time, with reciprocal discovery, defense ought to get a lot of things. There's got to be a downside as well, though, to having a preliminary hearing.
Well, I mean, I suppose the one downside is the argument is going to be that there's so much pretrial publicity that Scott Dulesky will not be able to get a fair trial in Contra Costa County and will prompt a change of venue motion by the defense. In terms of the other reason for doing a preliminary hearing, though, it's to sort of nail down the testimony of witnesses who could at some future time be, quote, hostile witnesses. So even though there is the right to do hearsay at preliminary hearings, that is, as friendly witnesses, they'll have the police officer testify as to what somebody said to them. But for example, with Scott Dulesky's mother, maybe his girlfriend, the prosecution will question them and the defense will have a full opportunity to cross-examine them such that they're sort of locked into that testimony and so they can't change their story at some future date.
All right, Larry, this case is sort of interesting in that nobody can quite figure out why he'd be up there. There were no fingerprints. He did wear gloves. Is this going to be a situation where there will be much that the body can tell us? There was no sexual assault here.
There's no question about it. The autopsy has a great deal of information, and it tells us exactly what happened from the time Dulesky entered the house. There was a very prolonged battle. She fought back very, very hard. She had defense wounds all over her arms and wrists and hands and a lot of blood spatter. She was beaten over the head many times, more than 30 times. And the autopsy has a great deal of information which will tell us about not only the cause of death, but other things. For example, the Laurentian cross or something like
carved in her back,
and just the trauma to the body. It was more than kill. It was overkill.
Well, and he was found with scratches on his face. This friend told us, though, there may be material under her fingernails.
Precisely.
Of course,
there's a lot of
turned over clothes.
Absolutely. There's evidence in the form of hair and DNA, and as you said, blood under the fingernails. And I think when you put the whole thing together, I think Dulesky's going to have a very tough time proving that he didn't do it.
All right, I want to play a soundbite, and this is an interview with Susan Polk. Of course, Dan was in the middle of trying her case when this murder occurred, and she's talking about Scott Dulesky.
It's my understanding that that when Mrs. Horowitz was killed, Pamela Vitale, that the police did look at Mr. Horowitz as a possible suspect, and then someone made an anonymous call and implicated Scott Dulesky, a 16-year-old boy. I don't know the details of that investigation, and I don't know how much evidence there is, but I do know that there were certain statements made to me by Dan which could be useful in the defense of Scott Dulesky, and which lead me to wonder whether Scott Dulesky is guilty.
Now, Michael, she may want to throw this out there, but where in the world does this become relevant? Dan is not charged with a crime. Authorities don't have him on the list at all. Is this stuff just a defendant venting a bit, or is this really something that could be a concern in the course of the trial?
Well, certainly the government's going to have to check it out. I mean, she said it publicly. But remember, can they go and just speak to her? No, because she's lawyered up in her own trial. So whatever information she has, unless she tells the police specifically what she has, they can't get to that. But remember, this is not a well-balanced woman. That's why I thought right from the get-go, and I say from the get-go, when Dan's wife was killed, that he should have got off the Dulesky case. And if you remember, he stayed on it for a while because he felt an obligation to her. Now, I can understand that. But on the other side of that, you can see what happens. You can see how she turned on him. She may want to use that type of information and trade it in her own case. All right, I'll tell you what Dan said if you give me a lesser crime or if you let me go. Who knows what's in her mind? But I think clearly in her own trial, it's been proven she is not well balanced. and can't be trusted.
All right, well, we have to take a break. We're going to have more with the panel on the other side. And don't forget, a little later, the dirty little secrets accused wife and baby killer Neil Entwistle tried to keep quiet. But first, tonight's bullet points in the case of a mistaken sex offender. Residents of one Arkansas town thought they were doing a good thing by alerting neighbors that a sex predator had moved in. They blanketed the area with warning posters, including some in front of the guy's own home. But now comes the oops. They had the wrong address. The resident who lived there didn't press charges, but police did issue a reminder. The sex offender registry is for protection, not harassment. We'll be right back.
TV Invest Vitamin C, brought to you by the Florida Department of Citrus. Vitamin C is a water-soluble antioxidant vitamin that is important in forming collagen, a protein that gives structure to bone and muscle. The recommended daily value for vitamin C is 60 milligrams per day. You can get vitamin C from orange juice, lemons, even broccoli. For more information on vitamin power, log on to courttv.com/orangejuice.
We asked Lindsay Allen how new Ambien CR helped her with her sleeping trouble. Well, there you are. New Ambien CR has a controlled release formula in a 2-layer tablet. The first layer dissolves quickly to help you get to sleep fast, while the second layer dissolves slowly to help you stay asleep. So you can wake up and get ready for your day. New Ambien CR is one of many treatment options, in addition to lifestyle changes, that you and your doctor can consider. Ambien CR is non-narcotic. Until you know how Ambien CR will affect you, you shouldn't drive or operate machinery. Side effects may include next-day drowsiness, dizziness, and headache. You shouldn't take it with alcohol. All sleep medicines carry some risk of dependency. Do not use sleep medicines for extended periods without first talking to your doctor. Be sure you're able to devote 7 to 8 hours to sleep before you need to be active again. Ask your doctor about the new Ambien. New Ambien CR. Tomorrow will thank you.
Marie Callender was like a lot of grandmas, and nobody has ever indulged us like Grandma. A cookie before dinner, the extra scoop, even a fort in the living room was just fine. And Marie Callender's also believes in a little indulgence, so we never cut corners. Like our chicken pot pie. It has a flaky crust made from scratch that's filled with tender chicken and crisp vegetables. Marie Callender's chicken pot pies. Sit down, eat, enjoy.
Presenting Blue from American Express. The card with no annual fee. And an introductory rate of 0% for up to 15 months with a low APR after. Call 1-800-600-BLUE or visit us online to get yours. You can pay over time, which makes this card remarkably flexible. It has a free rewards program with so many choices, it'll make your head spin. Plus, it has a fraud detection system which gives you extra security when you shop. All this with an introductory rate of 0% for up to 15 months and a low APR after. Call 1-800-600-BLUE or visit us online to apply. Blue from American Express.
We're back with the very latest from the Scott Zaleski preliminary hearing. Larry, we were talking on the break about the violence here. You're particularly intrigued with the viciousness of this crime.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the motive was, perhaps it was this hydroponic equipment. He comes into the house and perhaps she slapped him. I don't know what happened, but the level of violence was such, with such rage. I mean, being beaten 30 times over the head and then...
And for him to be calm enough to then shower in the property, as we understand.
Unbelievable. He had the time to clean up, take a shower. It's just, you know, it's hard to get into the mind of somebody like this. What sets them off? Something triggered this incredible rage. Again, I wonder if there was any kind of drug activity involved that, you know, was sitting there like a time bomb.
You think about a PCP or something like
of
that.
that sort.
Paula, in terms of defending this kid, we've got him going on the internet. We've got him buying a survival knife. This was November. Even San Francisco, I can understand why he showed up with gloves, literally due to weather. But you've got a lot of things that are going to give a jury pause about serious premeditation. Then whatever prompted the viciousness, taking a shower. How would you be trying to approach some sort of mitigating element here?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be a very, very, very difficult case to defend because the prosecution can have alternate theories. One theory could be that he went there with premeditation and deliberation with the intention to kill her, and the other theory could be that he was committing a burglary. And if he killed somebody in the commission of a burglary under the felony murder rule, he's guilty of first-degree murder. I mean, the interesting thing is that whether or not the prosecution is going to be able to prove up some special circumstance elevating the case beyond a first-degree murder such that as the punishment, Dulesky could have life without the possibility of parole imposed. So if they get a first-degree murder and some special circumstance, whether it's a killing in the commission of a burglary or whether it's a laying in wait type thing, or maybe even some sort of torture theory, then he would never, if the judge imposed it, he could, get life without the possibility of parole. In terms of a defense, it's going to be hard because this sort of diminished capacity doesn't really exist. Maybe there's some sort of insanity defense available. I mean, and Dan's my friend, so it's hard to think of a defense straight up. It's just
all right. Well, I wish we had
more.
more time. We've got a break. Lisa Sweetingham, Michael Cardozo, Paula Canny, thank you very much. And Dr. Kobalinski's back after the break. He's going to weigh in on some fascinating new forensic evidence in the double murders of Rachel Entwistle and her baby Lillian. Later, even though it's Valentine's Day, there's no love lost between President Bush and his critics, and that's all in tonight's Crier Wire. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
A good lawyer knows the law. A great lawyer knows the judge.
My name is Bucky Buchanan.
He makes sure what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Las Vegas Law. Tonight at 10.